Okay. Great. Yeah, so for those of you who will be watching this today, we are going to be talking about growth mindset, and I have some new material that is not necessarily in the coursework that I have there, some additional information. And so I am going to be doing a little kind of like PowerPoint presentation. And I will, I really want this to be interactive for the three of you that are on here. So pop in at any point and I will be asking questions, but this is probably a little more lecture heavy than I normally do in our learning labs. But I do want to start off and ask you a beginning question, and you can type it in the chat if you prefer, or you can say it out loud, whichever. Which the beginning question is there something that you've been told in your past that you were told you couldn't do, and you really, really wanted to be able to do it? And so I know I'm phrasing this as a yes or no question, but I should have phrased it as more, what is something in your past you've been told that you cannot do, and not like a rule, like don't go cross da 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 da, but something that you've wanted to do and you were told like you weren't capable of doing it, or you're not good at this or something like that, even though you really, really wanted to do it. Anyone have anything that comes to mind? Hey, Karen, how you doing?
I can break the ice. I think I have an obvious answer. For those of you that don't know me, I am an officer in the National Guard right now. Before I joined the Army, a lot of it was people not telling me not to join the Army. And now that I'm in the Army, I get some scoffs when, talking about my career. I say, I want to go to some pretty like elite schools or something like that. And, so it's kind of like a lot of like, right. Okay. Good luck.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So people are putting a ceiling on you. And thank you for sharing that. That is such a common thing, right? Everybody likes to tell you, no, you can't do that. You're not able to. So keep that in mind, Julia, as we go through kind of what I'm about to kind of be sharing. Anybody else have something that they were kind of told? Karen?
Oh, this one's kind of funny. I had said I wanted to go work on a ranch when I was a lot younger, my 20s. And someone said, why would anybody hire you to work on a ranch? You can't even ride a horse. And pretty much I was like, well, that's true. And that was that.
Mm-hmm. And so then you didn't do it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. How about anybody else have something?
Yeah, one thing that comes to mind throughout various like job searches is I've been told sometimes, but like when I'm asking people for advice, especially when it comes to salary negotiation, that like I shouldn't be asking for more than like, I don't know, like say $3,000 to $5,000 more than what the listed range was or what they were initially offering. It was always like, oh, well, like, you really think that you can bring that much, or like, and then it was always framed as like the intention is sort of to second guess. And so that's something that comes to mind. And I sometimes wish that I had not listened to those folks, because I think that I probably could have asked for more, and probably should have been paid more for some of those jobs. So that's one thing that comes to mind. Also, I apologize about going on and off camera quite a bit, but I'm coughing a lot, and I don't think you guys want to watch me cough.
Oh, not a problem whatsoever. Not a problem. I'm just glad you're here, even though you're still not up to snuff. So yeah. Yeah, so these are kinds of things, I don't know, Heidi, yeah, do you want to pop in?
I'm the only one left. I say not necessarily in things that like, oh, you can't do that because or that you weren't good at things, because I kind of went to the other side and was just told that I was good at everything. And some of that, like some of it I was, and I just put a lot of time into a lot of different things, which made it really hard and still makes it really hard to like pick a direction, because anything I do, I put so much effort into it that I do get good at it. But kind of more in a sense of like, not being successful, I guess, of like, you can do anything you want and you could be really good at it. But you're never going to make money doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Go for it. But who knows where it's gonna get you. It's interesting kind of that thing that you talked about, like everybody told you that you were really good at everything. And that's an interesting thing as well, because I'm curious, and this is something to think about as well, like when you try something new and you're not great at it, then what happens to you? And I think this is something that happens to all of us. There's something that we're really good at. And then when we try something new, especially as we get older, it's like, well, yeah, I just guess I can't do that. I mean, depending, some people are just like, yeah, whatever, I'm just going to keep going for that. So I'm going to start this presentation, and let me get it. We'll get all this zoominess set up and put it in presentation mode. All right, so today is about growth mindset and and I'm going to be talking about growth mindset, but also some other research that was not necessarily shared, as well as some neuroscience behind how we know that we can still grow. And so when you approach, life with a growth mindset, you can understand that abilities can be developed. And, I asked you all about what were something someone told you that you couldn't do, and could you do it? So a limiting belief. There's one that we have had in our culture for a very long time. It has nothing to do with human beings, but it references humans, which is, well, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, kind of a thing. And what we're really discovering is that is actually not true at all. There was, reading about fixed versus growth mindset that we went through. And so I just wanted to review this, because not everybody gets to, not everyone's caught up, which is totally fine. You're allowed to just show up and not be totally caught up in the materials online that we have. But the idea is a fixed mindset is that, we believe you cannot learn new things. Growth mindset is the belief that you can learn something new no matter what age you are at all. Often fixed mindsets come from messages that we've received from other people telling you your limitations. As a child, you just went out and did things. I mean, we had like our inner voice, but often you just went and tried things, or you were given lots of opportunities to try things, whether it's learning something in school, things that are presented to you, or whatever maybe your family shares with you. And I had a fixed mindset that someone said to me that I still fight to this day. And it was from an English teacher who actually I'm the youngest of 6, had all my siblings before me. And my father was her doctor. And apparently I learned later she got mad at him about something. So until me, she loved everybody. And then she just told me that I was the worst writer in the whole entire world. And no matter what I did, she came up with ways to tell me I was a horrible writer. But it was very impressionable for me. So I honestly, to this day, have struggled with writing, even though other people read my writing and think it's totally fine. And I haven't let it stop me. But that was like this, when I started learning about fixed mindset and growth mindset and how to grow and how to overcome that, I was like, well, okay, well, what was the largest message I received? Okay. So that was a pretty big message that literally haunts me. But so this concept of why we know that growth mindset is possible and that we always can learn new things. And so even though Karen got told, well, do you even know how to ride a horse? No, but I'm sure if she went to a ranch, there would have been some great, person there who would have said, just get on, come on, I'll teach you how to do that. But here's actually the reason that we know that growth mindset is possible. And it's about neuroplasticity. And I'm not sure, this is a common term nowadays. So I'm just going to run through this a little bit, even if you already have heard about it. But so neuroplasticity, is the ability for your brain to change throughout lifetime. And we do know that it changes, and not just the change where, the aging process, but there's really interesting ways that the brain changes depending on our environment and also depending on what happens to us. And so it can grow and always learn by doing a pattern or a path or, changing something. There's this statement that says, whatever fires together, wires together. Meaning, if I start learning a new skill, like say I want to pick up guitar, okay, at first it might be really, really hard, but the more I practice, my fingers are going to get used to moving or strumming, and my brain is going to start to notice, okay, when I move my fingers like this, or when I hear these sounds, I'm going to pick it up, and you'll start to get a muscle memory, and your ear will start to change and will start to develop and grow. And that is your brain changing, using its neuroplasticity. Another interesting thing that can happen with neuroplasticity of how your brain is always learning, people can have car accidents or some kind of head injury where a certain part of their brain is damaged and another part of their brain starts to light up and starts to take over some of the jobs that the damaged brain had happened. So we didn't, we don't really know, and we never used to think that that was possible. But there's two kinds of brain plasticity. There's structural neuroplasticity. And so that's when the brain structure actually changes because of experiences such as learning. And then there's functional neuroplasticity. And it's when the brain functions move from, like I was saying, a damaged area of the brain to another undamaged area of the brain. The structural neuroplasticity is really fascinating, and a very large part of where we learned that this can happen has to do, of course, we have SPECT scans and things of that nature now, but when they started studying meditators, okay, and a meditator is really trying to not grab onto thoughts, just to kind of let them come and let them go. And every time you kind of say, oh, there's a thought, I'm going to come back to my breath. There's a thought, I'm going to come back to my breath. They started to discover that the front part of our brain, which is our executive functioning, and it also is emotional resilience, started to get thicker. And I don't mean like our skull, but that part of the brain started to get thicker and started to grow, which means it was learning to actually not to let it not to follow wherever your mind takes you. Okay. That was one way. And that's also where we started to learn about neuroplasticity of whatever fires together, wires together, because you could get a thought of, I'm just not good at this. I'm just not good at this. And then it just keeps activating the emotions for you around that and activating that part of your brain. If you learn how to say, well, there's that thought that someone once said I wasn't good at this, or it's really challenging to do it. If you notice the thought and come back to practicing whatever it is new that you want to learn, or saying, like the way Julia said, was like, this is what I want to do. Yeah, I want to go into some great school. I'm going to try. There still is going to be that message, that predetermined thought, but her ability to bring it back to, no, this is what I want to do, starts to strengthen different parts of your brain that gives you the emotional resiliency in order to be able to really tolerate frustration of learning. And it moves you forward, and it excites you, and it activates you. And here's the other fascinating thing that I think is, you can learn, your brain does not care which way it learns. It is always learning. The brain is neutral. So it doesn't understand the difference between good learning or bad learning. It just knows this happened. This is what I learned, and here's my reaction to it. Okay, so that can go in either direction. So you can listen to or have a negative experience and say, okay, my brain knows, like, anytime I go and do this, this is what's going to happen, versus, and athletes really can overcome some of this, where they do something that physically is challenging for them, they get hurt, but they can just get back up and keep going and overcome it. And their brain doesn't learn, oh, when I do that thing, it's dangerous. It learns, oh, yeah, that hurt, but I can keep moving through it. But so the three common aspects of neuroplasticity, like age and environment. So certain types of changes happen at specific ages. And, when we're young, our brains are really like little sponges that are going towards, soaking everything up. As we do get older, our brains do get a little bit more fixed, or we have things that happen in our environment. And this is where what's called epigenetics comes into play, where depending on what's happening in your environment, it pulls out different genes and different ways for your brain to function. And then also when we age, we have certain things that happen. Our brain and neuroplasticity is always happening no matter what. When you learn, when you have a new experience, it's just constantly growing, constantly learning and changing. And brain plasticity does have its limitations. So it cannot be made new. And so that's part of always doing growth-oriented things. And that is something that it builds different structures and it builds different pathways. But it's not as if we can kind of recreate parts of our brain. So our brain learns over and over again, but here's the really interesting part. And I think this is the part that has to do with work and our lives and being on a team and leadership, and a lot of the new information that's coming out around the importance of integrating play with work, or relaxation with work, or breaks into work. So we know that when we rest, and I don't mean just sleeping, but we give our brain a different task or something different to look at, it starts to strengthen our plasticity and rejuvenate. So there are activities that boost this, dancing, traveling, doing some kind of creative art or something that's creative. And so maybe it's not art, maybe it's like creating, could be cooking, or it could be landscaping, or it could be something like that. But reading fiction so your mind can play a little, playing an instrument, doing meditation. And so this whole process of neuroplasticity, a lot of people don't talk about or bring into thinking about fixed and growth mindset, but that is the science that is partly underneath, okay, how we know about fixed and growth mindset. So, and you know, Carol Dweck, she talks about that a lot in what she's doing. Then there's this other really great book called The Big Leap. And Gay Hendricks was a Stanford psychologist. And this is kind of talking about that message that we get that keeps us in this framework of a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. And he says, if I cling to the notion that something is not possible, I'm arguing in favor of limitations. And so, and if I argue for my limitations, then I get to keep them. Okay. And so it's interesting to think about, when are we going in and telling ourselves, this is a limitation for me, or I'm scared, or I'm frightened of that. And that inner voice that we have, I like to think of as it's just our mind talking to ourselves. It's not who you are. And I know that our society is really based on, especially Western culture, the concept, I think, therefore I am. But I like to flip that and say, I am, therefore I think, therefore I get to choose which thoughts I want to follow and which thoughts I want to believe. And that's very important when you're thinking about growth mindset. So I have a picture of me here with my skis on my back, on my pack. And this is was an example. The reason I'm showing this is because I was at Mount Rainier, and I was just going to be hiking up to base camp and then skiing back down, which I have to tell you, it was like a little line of ants, of people just going up. This was not a scary thing, but my husband at the time kept prepping me. You know, we do a lot of backcountry skiing, but he kept prepping me by doing all these scary things in the house, like making little flags, because there's glaciers on either side. Like, you can slip into a glacier at any moment, which scares the bejesus out of me. And so he kept saying, okay, well, we got to have these flags because the clouds can roll in, and we're going to have to place the flags everywhere we go so that we can see where we're going to ski back, like how we ski back. And so I already had a limitation, which is I can't do this. That is not how I want to die. Okay. This is literally what I was thinking. This is not how I want to die. Now I would ski all over the Bitterroots. I've skied in Canada, right? Like, this is ridiculous. And I wish I had a picture of all the little ants of people that you can see are going up and going up and going up. But I was so terrified of this because I believed in the limitation that I wasn't capable of stopping myself from falling into a glacier, or I wouldn't be capable of actually doing this, that I actually had the worst time in the world. And, but I was arguing for my limitations. I was arguing for, I cannot do this. Just like my English teacher taught me to argue, you are not a good writer. You will never be a good writer. You will always write like a soap opera because all you do is watch General Hospital when you get home after work. I mean, after school, right? This is kind of what her thoughts were. But so here's the 3 premises of Gay Hendricks' book. One is that we don't believe we deserve to be happy all the time. And that is definitely something, again, that one, we have a culture that seeks happiness, but also if you get it, there's this fear like you're going to be hit with a Mack truck. Like, you cannot hold on to happiness and you don't deserve to have happiness. Fear and self-sabotage are 2 common feelings that occur that that we actually can break through with the right attitudes and exercises. And some of those exercises are not necessarily, learning how to not listen to the inner critic, or what I call we all have passengers on our bus. And I think about our bus as like up in our mind, and they're all the voices and the people that have said things about us. And they're usually there to tell us you can't do this, or, oh, they're going to think you're silly, or, oh, there's no possibility that anyone's going to believe you. It's usually those negative things that kind of hold you in. And the goal is actually to keep you safe. And then the other big premise that he has is that when it comes to work, and I'm going to start when we get into these 4 zones, I'm going to have you all get into a couple breakout groups to talk about these. But when it comes to work, we can be in 4 zones, but he believes that only one is worth shooting for. And before I show that, I really love this quote by Fritz Perls, which is that fear is excitement without the breath. And what he means by that is there's this moment that you have fear and you hold your breath. But what we do know is that if you can breathe and remind yourself to breathe and do a specific kind of breathing, which is called, we call it 4x4 breathing, where you breathe in for a count of 4 and then exhale very, very slowly for a count of 4, do that 4 times. Sometimes people call it box breathing. Physiologically, you can lower your fear. But the way that he spins it is that it's really just excitement, like excitement about what's going to happen. And I work with a lot of reframes all the time when I think about when I work with people about, instead of saying I'm really anxious about something, we find a different word that can be more helpful. Like I'm very eager, because sometimes anxiety is a very broad term when there's lots of other emotions underneath. So you can play with it. You can say, I'm really eager about going to do this. And it starts to change the way that you view that situation. So these 4 zones of work that Gay Hendricks talks about is, there's the zone of incompetence. So you think you suck at the task and many people can do it better than you. There's the zone of competence. You're all right, but lots of others cope better than you. The zone of excellence, you're highly skilled and few can hold a candle to you. In the zone of genius, you're literally the best in the world at it. So there are people that we can point out and say, yeah, Yo-Yo Ma is a cellist. He's a zone of genius. Could be literally, he and Yitzhak Perlman could literally be, the best string instrument in the world. When you listen and talk to Yo-Yo Ma and listen or hear any of his interviews, he practiced and practiced and practiced and practiced and practiced and practiced and practiced, right? And so this is what Gay Hendricks believes, that each and every one of us can get to the zone of genius if we want, if we don't limit ourselves, because a lot of it is about practice and failure and redoing it again. Most of us place ourselves in different tasks in the world, usually at 1 or 2, and maybe with one thing that we really feel that we're highly skilled at, and few can hold a candle to you. So I'm going to put you guys into breakout groups right now. And what I'd love for you to discuss is, first, you're going to talk about what are 2 things, okay? One thing that you place yourself in kind of the 1 or 2 zone, and one thing that maybe you could place yourself in the 3 or 4 zone. All right, does that makes pure sense? Okay. So I'm gonna create a couple breakout rooms. Just want to make sure I set the clock correctly. Okay, I'm gonna give you like 8 minutes so that you each have 4 minutes to talk about it. And then there'll be a minute countdown. All right. All right. So that's kind of all the sharing of information that I have. And now it's all discussion and fun chat. So I'd love to hear if anyone would like to share. What are your thoughts about growth mindset and these zones and neuroplasticity? I'm gonna keep this discussion really open and wide because it's fun to see where your minds are at and how all of this landed on you.
One thing that Karen and I were enjoying talking about, so I mentioned that something that I feel like I'm at a 1 or a 2 with would be a lot of physical activities. Like I really enjoy doing them, like biking or running. And they're the sorts of things where like you would get better if you continue to work at it. But there's still that component of like feeling like you're stuck sometimes and like you can't quite get there. And then also tied to that, we were talking about how like I mentioned that I've sort of lightly thought sometimes about like maybe hiring a coach or something like that to help me, because some of it I feel is sort of a mental block almost in terms of being able to do something. Like I mentioned to Karen that I love biking, but I've never been able to figure out how to stand up on my bike while biking, especially like going uphill. And so many people have told me like, just do it, just do it. And I feel like there's like some kind of mental connection going on there, but with regards to coaching, I've sort of resisted it because it's felt sort of silly to me because I don't consider myself to be a very competent cyclist, for example, or a very fast runner. And so it almost like I talk to myself and then I say to myself like, oh, this is a waste. Like you aren't good enough yet to like have that kind of coaching or that kind of mentorship. Anyway, I'm kind of rambling, but I just wanted to share that bit.
It's interesting, Joanna, because I think you bring up a really good point, right? There's something that you really want to do that somehow you're feeling limited by, and then you're adding another limitation on, which is, and you said, I'm not good enough to have a coach. And that's interesting, right? So then we even have another limitation. And we like to say to ourselves, only these types of people get to have a coach, right? But if we're going to add on there the kind of growth mindset framework or, Gay Hendricks framework of we're only placing limitations on ourselves, there is like a little hidden limitation in there. I don't know if that, if that resonates with you or that feels like, wait, Rachel, you're not listening to me when I'm saying I'm just not good at this. But it's just an interesting kind of thing maybe for you to be thinking about. It is hard to stand up on a bike when you're going uphill.
Well, so what's interesting about that conversation too is that I've never mastered clipless pedals or whatever they're called, clip-in or whatever. And Joanne was like, well, I was able to do that. So, Joanna, my estimation of your biking skills went way up when you said you could do that. And I think it's interesting what we all have in our own minds. You know, I think that is like, what's like our measure of good enough. And the other thing that's, you know, what kids get coached, and we're totally like, get in there. This is, you know, we just don't have any qualms about, oh, you have to be good enough to get coached or be on a team. You're supposed to be out. We want kids to be getting exposed to the experience. But then unless we're a professional athlete, we feel like we lose that opportunity.
Yeah, definitely true. We start to believe that we don't have that luxury in order to bring that to us, and where those messages come from can be really interesting. Let's stick with you guys for right now, if that's okay. What were some things that you put yourself at a 3 or a 4?
I can start. I think it was interesting. There were some parallels both. So Joanna said like big picture thinking and kind of thinking strategically about what might be happening, you know, next steps. I'm paraphrasing Joanna, so I don't know if I'm getting it right. And I would say that would be one of my 1s or 2s too. And, you know, thinking about process, thinking about how do we bring people in. And so you kind of have to think ahead. Like if we do this, that'll happen. Oh wait, those are the 3s or 4s.
Yeah, these are your 3s and 4s.
Yeah, did you ask 1s or 2s?
3s or 4s. I said, what was your 3s or 4s?
Okay, so that's 3s or 4s.
Yeah, so where you feel competent or excel in has to do more with these areas that you're doing, that visioning, that kind of communication skills and creating relationships and connection and moving people through a process. So in that conversation, did you both place yourselves in that? Was that yours as well, Joanna's, for the 3 and the 4?
Yeah, I put myself at a 3 or 4 for, yeah, just sort of like a strategic thinking kind of perspective and figuring out like next steps, sort of like planning. Like I'm very, very good at planning. I also put myself at a 3 or 4 for baking and cooking.
Nice. So how about Julia and Heidi? What was your discussion like?
I am lucky enough to work for a company who focuses very highly on the growth mindset, and that is Aspen Skiing Company. We have like seminars and stuff at the beginning and classes that you can take throughout the course of the season to learn how to do that, and to learn how to make this like your business and really excel in all areas of life. So that's pretty awesome and has really made a big difference in my life. I've worked there for like 7 years now, 7th season, and I love it. So going through this, it was kind of like, I don't really focus on things that I don't do well at. A lot to just kind of come up with things like right off the top of my head, be like, oh, these are the things I suck at. I don't spend much time over there in that world. You know, there's always things to get better at, obviously, but I don't put a whole lot of energy into sitting there. So I kind of like started with the top and then worked down and was like, what are things that I'm really good at? That is my snowboarding. You know, I definitely make it into the upper ranks of areas that most people without being an instructor probably will never reach, or getting coached in some way quite a bit. My music is also one. I've been playing violin since I was 10. I'm 32 now. And so that's always there, and my vocal abilities. that I've had since I was 2 as well, trained in. And my art. And I just kind of always had this natural gift for doing art, not sculpting. So I could put the sculpting down in the level 1 there. Did not do great with that. But I've just picked up watercolor for the first time, and like, I guess I said 20 years, but it's probably been like 15 years, since I really did watercolor, and it doesn't really look like I stopped. But I do acrylics as well. I'm doing mixed media and stuff like that. So I've still been painting, but watercolor is a very difficult medium to work with. So that's kind of more of my upper categories. One day maybe I'll sell my art, maybe not. I have to like actually set up something online for that. Modern age. But then working down, I kind of went into, well, Julie brought up for me of like, maybe it's not like a real like physical thing, it's more of like the conceptual things. And so just kind of like, what did I pull out? Something about relating people.
You talked about
it-
like the beginning stages of friendships and small talk.
Oh yeah, no, I really suck at small talk. And being able to like start those little tiny baby steps and whatnot. I'm like, no, let's just like cut to the real stuff. Which actually just gets me a lot of friends from the East Coast, I've learned. So because they're kind of more that way.
We got along swell.
Yeah, just get to the point and let's be done. So yeah, so I'm not so great in those areas, and there's definitely more, there's always things. I definitely keep that, like, there's always something to work on, but I try to focus on like kind of smaller zones of, oh yeah, I brought up my book that I'm currently reading, the How to Win Friends and Influence People. That's my bedtime reading for the time being. So yeah, I think I did remember like getting to starting this business and whatnot, and kind of like going back to the beginning of what we talked about. Then it kind of hits into that world of like, yeah, I don't really know what I'm doing. And this is kind of weird because I did get in a lot of that, like picking things up really quickly and whatnot. But I realized most of the time that happened, I usually did have somebody teaching me how to do it, and this is kind of a little bit more just all on my own, swimming through. So
Yeah. So, Julia, I'm wondering, what were your thoughts of the 1 and 2 and the 3 and 4, and in your discussion with Heidi?
Sure. This was challenging for me because I was explaining to Heidi, I've always been incredibly mediocre at literally everything I've done. And I don't mean that in like a negative way or anything, but like, I mildly athletic, played soccer, a bunch of sports in high school, was in the honors courses, all that kind of stuff, was in band, right? But I also was like the worst person in all of those things. I did them, but I was like not impressive. So for me, there really isn't anything or skill or task or something that I actually have ever felt confident and proficient in. For me, it was a lot more conceptual, and I would say at my age and station in life, I have absolutely no right to go anywhere above a 3, because it's just part of my journey, and I would say my 3 would just be my commitment to self-development and learning. Just that I made the commitment. I was fortunate enough to have gone on the journey and path that I have at a young age, and at 23, I'm deciding that this is a priority for me in my life and my development. So when I'm older, when I doubled my age, I can only imagine the things hopefully that I'll be able to do. If I'm committed to always having a student mindset, always be learning, You're never going to be the smartest in the room, that kind of stuff. So my 1s and 2s were mostly conceptual of motivation. I'm very externally motivated, commitment to others, and a structure that has been set for me or that I have set for myself and I have handed to someone else for accountability. So I really need to work on intrinsically motivating and holding myself to the standard when no one's looking. And then a lot of this is like on a physical level of exercise and, intellectual work and things like that when I'm alone. Yeah. So those were my 1, 2, and 3.
It's very interesting what you bring up, and I love what you bring up. Very few people are zone 4s. Very few people are genius. And most of us, when we think about what are we good at, we're looking at these external achievements that can showcase something. And that's wonderful. What you're talking about of actually what, kind of where your zone of work is, has to do with endurance and open-mindedness and an acceptance. And I don't mean the word acceptance like I accept that this is how it is, but you carry with you this mindset of I enjoy doing this, so I'm going to keep doing it, and it's okay. Over time, I might incrementally get better. Like you framed it as, and the language that you used was, in this station in my life, I'm okay being mediocre at everything. And if I keep working and trying on things, then maybe in 30 years or at a different station in life, I will have looked back and seen growth and might experience them different. And that was a wonderful lead in. And I think that's a really important thing is we live in this culture where it's very measurement based. And I think that's the whole concept that Carol, I can never say her last name, Dwyer, and then Gay Hendricks, and this concept of neuroplasticity is it's not really about being the best or achieving or having it perfect, but it's about trying all these different things and keeping ourselves active and not limiting. Like I don't hear limitation. You could have easily said, oh yeah, I wasn't great at band, I wasn't great at athletic stuff, but I keep doing it because it's something I found pleasure in and something that I'm going to keep doing. And this is, growth mindset based in a leadership course is really about we cannot be good at everything, and we're going to be with people around us who are not good at everything. But can we be setting up systems of growth? And Heidi talked about this, that she has been fortunate enough to work for a place that has this growth mindset, which is you may be here, but let's just keep practicing. And then you might, kind of achieve a little bit more of what you wanted or grow a little bit more. So I'm curious, in your journeys as leaders or through this course, thinking about growth mindset and neuroplasticity and maybe these different zone of works, what would be your areas that you're thinking about implementing a growth mindset rather than a fixed mindset? So I'm going to type that in the chat box. And you could think about it a little, and if you want to pop that in there. I'm going to throw mine in. Oops, I guess I forgot to put, oh, I had a period in the question that I sent you. Sorry about that. Yeah. Yeah, so having a growth mindset around self-perception. What is that story? What is our belief about what we tell ourselves about who we are? And there's different journeys to doing some of these. Breaking out of the traditional mindset of where to work and how to work. Yeah. So Karen, can you, and then Julie, I'm gonna actually have you talk about that too. Can you say more about that?
I could jump in. Well, so I think what I mean by this is even during the pandemic, for me, having like work structure and like I am a very traditional worker. I like to go to a place where I work. I like to have my kind of regular work hours, which, expand as needed. And it doesn't mean I can't work from home or I don't have a great place to work from home. But then when it's like, oh, wouldn't it be nice to go work somewhere else? Like go to a warm place or I don't know. I mean, just do something differently. And I'm like, oh no, I can't do that because it just doesn't feel right to me.
The rule is that you are supposed to work in an office from 9 to 5 and you have to stay where you are, interact with people in that way and not necessarily be like Tim Ferriss who says 4-hour work week, you can work from anywhere, you can be
Oh, yeah,
remote, you can work
Yeah.
from a beach and it's all great. And
Yeah,
That-
I have a very, I just think it's traditional
Mhm.
and it's hard for me to get out of, it's like I've got to show up in a certain way
Mhm.
and it's hard for me to think about it, doing it differently. It doesn't mean I can't see other people doing it differently. It's like for myself though. And so it's like, well, why do I have that kind of resistance? It's like, it's not valid or to me, it feels like, I don't know, maybe it's just the way I am and I should accept it and go with it. I don't know. Did something funny happen?
Somebody just joined in. I don't know, Alexa. Okay. Welcome, Alexa.
But I also I like that other things people are writing. They're very thought provoking.
Yeah. Yeah, Julia, I'm interested if you want to say more about self-perception or if what you wrote speaks to that already.
Yeah, I can guess I can like develop on it a little bit. I mean in the way that it's maybe the excuses that we've made for ourselves already inadvertently or limitations that we've put on ourselves. I think for me a story that I've been telling myself for years and I already told you guys is that I'm mediocre at everything I do. I'm never going to be good at anything. And maybe that is true, maybe it's not, and maybe it's limiting what I am doing today because it's but I think it's one of those things where it's whatever you're putting energy into ends up being the outcome. For me, I have tried to, and I still have more growth to do in this department, but I've taken it from like a negative to being kind of just a neutral fact where it's not something bad, but it hasn't exactly empowered me quite yet to, you know, because I've always been so spread thin in trying to do a little bit of everything. Maybe if I do focus on 1 or 2 or 3 things and actually learn how to work hard, and, you know, because in my mind, my story and my self-perception is I've always just tried and put my fingers in a bunch of things, and I've never dug down deep, and I've never worked hard for something, and had it not work out the first 2 or 3 or 4 times that I try. And then, you know, so that person or whatever it is, or that, and this is kind of what Joanna was saying before with the bike, you know, like we've been telling ourselves a story of, I can't stand up on the bike. But if, you know, and I've been telling myself a similar story for so many different things. But, you know, I'm 23. I started having that dialogue with myself at 15. But if I started trying at 15, how great I would be at a lot of those things, or how much growth I would have made between now and then at a lot of those things. I bet it would be a measurable, you know, growth. So something that has been affecting me lately, was a quote that I think would also maybe help you, Joanna, with your bike situation, is it's an Epictetus quote, and it's how long are you going to wait to demand the best for yourself? Not right now. Like, why aren't we putting everything we have into right now? You know, how long are we going to wait? How long are we going to be putting something off that we want to do? So I'm trying to now layer that into my own story and rewrite my story.
Mhm. Yeah, Joanna, what are you thinking about that?
I think that it's really hard to internalize in the moment when you are going through, like, you know, I find it really inspirational to read about things and think about them, but it's so hard in the moment to actually put it into practice, as I'm sure everybody knows. But I do really like that quote, and I definitely feel it, like it really resonates with me. What you said, Rachel, also resonated with me, like just the general sense of imposter syndrome, sort of related to that whole sports metaphor thing. The other thing that I was telling Karen about in our conversation was, like, you know, just feeling like you're good enough to, like, join in on like group rides, for example, or join in on group runs because you feel like you're going to be too slow and get left behind, or, you know, like things like that. So just, you know, feeling like feeling like you do belong in the circle of cyclists or runners or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to come back to that. I got to write something down so I can come back to that, because I want to have Heidi talk about what she wrote a little bit there. So Heidi, you wrote building confidence in my knowledge, acknowledging I have something to share. I got the degree, but I downplay that a lot. Can you talk a bit more about that?
Yeah. I kind of going into that, like always being told you're good, that you like quit believing it. That like you can't be good at everything. And so then it's like, oh, then maybe I'm not good at anything. But I really downplay the fact that I got a bachelor's degree. I went through school on a disability vocational rehabilitation grant, basically. And I graduated as a TBI survivor. I didn't tell any of my professors, so I didn't win the award. I didn't know there was an award to win. But I did get nominated, but it was already too late for the presidential award for outstanding achievement. But so even like in school, I'm still like, this is no big deal. like anybody could do this. And then after I learn something, I always feel like everybody knows it because it's not that big of a deal. Like it's just knowledge and other people could know it too. Um, and so like getting this confidence of being like, no, I do know what I'm talking about. And it's like, especially in these areas, like doing nutrition and stuff like that. Like I studied this stuff in school and I really loved it there. And I soaked up as much as I could. And I still am involved in it now. Nutrition and neuroscience are the two things that I stuck with. And still look up research on now and help people with. And a lot of people come to me still and ask me questions, and it's still kind of like, oh, it's just like, I'm just answering questions, you know, it's no big deal. Instead of being like, no, like most people don't really know any of this stuff. And a lot of people don't know like the 3 main categories of that foods fall into, you know, like, do we even know what a macronutrient is when people are trying to figure out how to balance their diet? And that there's a lot more to it than just that. And so that's kind of like some of that, like building coursework and whatnot is like breaking it down small enough too, that it's like, oh, people really don't know like some really basic things that I just don't think about very much anymore. Because I'm kind of like, it's just part of how I think, you know.
Yeah.
I look at an item, I know exactly the protein, fat, carb ratio and how many like good fats and bad fats. Like my brain just automatically like calculates that stuff when I look at different foods. So yeah, it's like backing up and like taking that, being like, no, I do know this stuff, and figuring out how to help other people be able to do that as well. And to
Sure.
get to that place where they don't have to count calories, they don't have to be like, oh, can I eat this? Like, no, you know, like, oh, I ate this kind of stuff today, I ate this yesterday, like, you know, and developing this bigger picture that I'd love people to have. Instead of getting funneled in and and focusing on one thing. So
Yeah, it can be very hard for once we've integrated information for us to realize that we do have something to share, because it just becomes, like you're saying, a part of our everyday kind of way of being. Something that I want to kind of go back to that I had written down, and I think it comes back for all of us, and it has to do with the concept that we talked about in module 2 of empathy and vulnerability, and this growth mindset process is an opportunity for us to have empathy for ourselves and to begin practicing vulnerability around, if it is a sporting something, right? To be willing to go out and just do it and not have that inner critic that says, oh my God, everybody thinks this about me, or, oh, I can't keep up, therefore that means I'm not X, Y, and Z, or, you know, work life looks like this. And it also seems like there's a balance of what helps me feel safe so that I can excel. So maybe it is, I need a specific kind of environment, or I need certain kind of support, versus, you know, what is it that that word that I started out our sessions with, which is intention. How do I stretch, right? How do I stretch myself into this uncomfortable space and see what that is like? Yeah, and Karen said part of it is what we think is valuable, or how we measure up to norms and expectations. And that is, Karen, so key. And I think it's the biggest challenge of being human, is we want to belong. And that's our goal, is to belong. And when we strive to belong, we can't always show ourselves as incapable or weak or not good enough. And the interesting part of some of the ways of being different leaders, or in being different on teams and really growing, is about showing that I'm valuable even if I can't do what you can do. Or I can see that this person has growth capabilities and is valuable, kind of that, how do you mentor your best team? Or how do you start to help others feel confident enough so that the gems inside of them can come out and contribute to this greater mission or the greater goal of what your leadership is bringing or what your work life is bringing. And it's very hard to feel, to start working on like quieting those messages, like, right, we want to belong, we want to fit in. So I think you're absolutely correct.
Well, and I think it's also being willing to kind of stretch our minds about what else is valuable or what else is valid.
Mhm, mhm.
Because there's so many, that helps us, like you said, free your mind. If part of practice is we do the same thing over again and we kind of maybe we get into a rut, right? And if we can think about practicing something new and lessening the messages that all that other practice for years and years has reinforced in our minds.
I agree. Yeah. Alexa, you popped on, and just wondering if you want to say hi and if you want to contribute. It's okay if you don't. Okay. I'm just typing some things in the
Oh.
chat. Oh, hi, Alexa.
Hi. No, I saw the post and I just was interested in what the meeting was about, but I'm just listening.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, so here are some things to think about as you move forward in some of the things that you've outlined, and maybe just start playing with this concept of fixed mindset, growth mindset, neuroplasticity, limiting beliefs, is like, really, what is your growth plan? Who will you or who do you learn from? What messages do you need to conquer that hold you back? And where are these messages coming from? We have a lot of internalized messages that are not always accurate. And a really neat exercise to do is to have two sheets of paper throughout your day. Okay, our minds are always going. I still can't figure out how they measured this, but apparently we have 60,000 thoughts a day. And sometimes I think we even have more. But so basically our mind is like a radio. It's just constantly going. And its job is to keep you safe. And the way that it keeps you safe is by doing what's called a negativity bias, which the negativity bias is that we see all things that could make us uncomfortable or harm us. And what this whole kind of section is about is, how do we believe that I can grow, that my team can grow, that I as a leader can grow? And so designing intentionally, what is my growth plan? Okay, so yeah, I may be good at visioning and processing, but am I good at bringing other people into that and helping them learn how to vision and process? Or I may be really good at, teaching people things or understanding certain concepts. But if I want to have a viable business, then I need to figure out how to bring them along on that. And that's my growth as a leader. Or for, if I feel that I'm a generalist, which many of us are generalists, which means that we're not particularly good at anything, but we can do a lot of different things. what is my growth plan to maintain that, or to maybe specialize in one area? And maybe growth plan is around mindset. How do I start to learn that it's okay to be how I am and who I am? And how do I learn that? What messages do I need to conquer? So the activity is you have a sheet of paper and you write down what your mind is telling you about something. So you go to do something and instantly your mind's going to say like, and I'm not talking about things like, oh, should I take the trash out right now or not? Because our mind thinks about that stuff too, especially working from home. Oh, well, no, I'll take a break, take the trash out, or I'll do my laundry. But it's really more about something you're about to do. And your mind starts to say, well, I don't know. Should I really do that? If I do that, I might fail, or they might think this, or it might be, I don't know, I can't write that up there, or I can't start to work on this now because I don't know how to do X, Y, and Z. So you start to write out every message that your mind is telling you. And the messages, what your mind tells you, sometimes it's a feeling, I feel this way about that, or it's an actual thought pattern, or you get a sensation of nervousness or overwhelm, and then that triggers a thought. And so you write all of that down on a piece of paper. And then on the other side, you kind of look at it and then you write down which thoughts are actually true and which ones are not true. And then you look at which thoughts are helpful and which thoughts are not helpful. Okay, and that, is this a helpful thought or is this an unhelpful thought? There could be a truth, okay, about something, which is, yeah, I'm not really, I don't write quippy marketing whatevers, but I can do it. But the truth is I'm not really good at it. But is that a helpful thought or not a helpful thought if I want to be doing some marketing of something? Or maybe the truth is, I'm going to go back to you, Joanna, just because that was like, you've been talking about standing up on a bike and not standing up on a bike. Yeah, the truth is I can't right now stand up on a bike, but is that a helpful thought or an unhelpful thought if I want to grow? And part of that growth might be the realization, you know, I don't really want to stand up on a bike. If I'm clipped into my pedals, maybe I want to learn how to pull on my pedals rather than doing the stand and bounce. I don't know. But that activity can be a really interesting activity because often when we leave the thoughts in our mind, they get really ingrained and they grow and we believe them. When we can put the thoughts out on a piece of paper and then take some space and look back and say, okay, there it is on paper. Is it really true? Is it not true? Is it a useful thought or a not useful thought? Or sometimes there are words that I can change, like my phrase of anxious versus eager, anxious versus excited. I have this friend who, obviously this was pre-COVID, took his little guy, 5 years old, to go to kindergarten for the first time. And he said, so buddy, like, how you feeling? Are you scared? And he says, no. He says, I have that feeling. It's called new feeling. Like, so dad labeled it scared, and little guy labeled it new feeling. Which I just love that story because we all get new feeling. But there's excitement in new feeling, in vulnerability, in challenge, and trying things. So we're at the end of today. I'm gonna have you go around and say one word that describes where you are at around this discussion. sometimes people can get away with 2 words because sometimes we need a little beginning or an end. But where you're at with this discussion today and what you're thinking about.
Challenged.
Okay, how about you, Heidi?
I feel kind of related to a little bit going through this, just kind of seeing everybody working on similar but different things,
So related to, great.
related to, yeah.
Joanna,
Thoughtful.
thoughtful?
Mhm.
Okay. It glitched in. Julia?
Reflective.
Alexa, do you have a word? You don't have to, since you're just kind of listening, but I want to include you if you want to share. You could pop in or not pop in. I am, my word would be stretched. Think no matter how many times I get to be in front of you all and I lead groups a lot and lead workshops and help people on growth, I still always feel stretched. And I love it. So thank you for helping my growth mindset. Next week is our last learning lab. And the thing that kind of pulls all this together is there's an authentic leadership canvas. And so I'd encourage you to print that off and begin looking at it and seeing if you can work on filling in the different components of the canvas and have that out if you want to look at that. And that's a bit of, next week we're just kind of have a celebration, a wrap up, going through that canvas and doing a couple other activities that will be more interactive and fun than today's and my lecturing. So, but thank you all. I hope you have a wonderful evening. And those of you with the colds and sniffles, I hope you feel better. So,
Thank you.
okay.
Great to see you all.
Yeah, great to see you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.